Kale Varen had seen a lot in his life. He had survived sandstorms on barren worlds, ambushes from hostile aliens, and countless battles that left scars on his body and mind. But nothing could have prepared him for the burning wreck that now lay across the rocky surface of the frontier planet. The heat was intense and smoke curled into the sky, turning the air thick and almost impossible to breathe. Yet Kale did not hesitate. Every instinct screamed that someone might still be alive inside. The shuttle had been carrying a high-ranking passenger, Liara, the daughter of Empress Selira. Rumors always followed the royal family, but Kale had no time for rumors. His focus was on the red glow of the fire, the twisted metal, and the faint cry that came through the smoke. He moved quickly, boots crunching against jagged rocks, scanning for dangers that were now both natural and man-made. As he approached the wreck, he saw the shuttle's hull had been torn apart. Flames licked the edges, and sparks shot into the air with every minor explosion. A sharp metallic screech rang out as a piece of the shuttle's wing twisted and fell onto the ground. Kale rolled out of the way just in time. "Hold on," he muttered under his breath. "I've got you." Moving carefully through the flames, he avoided falling debris, broken panels, and leaking fuel that hissed with deadly promise. His training kicked in. Years of soldiering on the most dangerous worlds had taught him how to stay calm under fire, how to think quickly, and how to move with purpose when chaos surrounded him. Finally, he spotted her. Liara's white hair was singed in places, her royal robes torn, her face pale and streaked with soot. Her small frame was pinned under a collapsed panel, and smoke burned her eyes as she struggled to breathe. Kale didn't pause to think. He shoved the panel aside, grunting with the effort, and lifted her gently. She weighed almost nothing compared to the burden of her fragile state, yet the way he held her felt natural, almost instinctive. "Kale," she whispered hoarsely, recognition sparking through her exhausted eyes. You came for me." Every step was careful. One wrong move and the fire could trap them. The ground beneath was unstable, and Kale had to jump over cracks and molten patches. Sweat streamed down his face, but he ignored it. Liara's life depended on his focus, not his comfort. When they were finally at a safer distance, Kale laid her down on a rocky ledge, trying to shield her from the wind that fanned the flames. He tore a strip from his jacket to bind a minor cut on her arm and checked her breathing. She was alive, but barely. He needed to move quickly, find shelter, and get her medical attention before the night brought even more dangers. "Kale," Liara's voice was barely audible. Why did you risk yourself for me?" "Everyone deserves a chance to survive. And right now, you need me alive as much as I need to keep you alive." Kale carried Liara as best he could, ducking under smoke and stepping over debris. Every movement had to be calculated. They were not safe yet. The shuttle could explode at any moment, and the fire might spread faster than expected. He scanned the sky for signs of help, but there was nothing. They were alone on a wild planet where the Empire's forces rarely intervened so quickly. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed to stretch in the chaos. Kale finally spotted a rocky outcrop that could provide temporary shelter. He lowered Liara gently and began assessing her injuries more thoroughly. She had a burn across her shoulder, a deep cut on her leg, and bruises along her ribs. None of them seemed fatal yet, but if they stayed in the open, the smoke and heat could kill her before her wounds did. Kale tore more strips from his jacket to make a basic bandage for her leg. He wrapped her shoulder carefully and kept her moving enough to maintain circulation without straining her injuries. Every small act, adjusting a bandage, covering her face from the smoke, keeping her warm, was critical. "They said the Empire's guards would protect me," Liara whispered between labored breaths. They never came." "We act." He focused on the path ahead, using every skill he had learned in his years of survival. He checked the ground for unstable patches, avoided thin ledges, and carried Liara with steady determination. Every step was precise. Every decision mattered. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in streaks of red and orange, Kale found a narrow cave nestled into the side of a cliff. It wasn't ideal, but it would shield them from falling debris, smoke, and the cold night that would arrive soon. Carefully, he eased Liara inside, laying her on a soft bed of rocks and using his jacket as a pillow. He sat beside her, keeping one hand on her shoulder. "Rest now," he said gently. "You've been through hell, but you made it. I won't let anything happen to you." Hours passed in silence. Kale kept watch, listening to every sound outside the cave. The frontier was dangerous, and they were vulnerable. Every rustle of wind or distant animal cry made him tense. He was alone with a critically injured passenger and no backup. But he did not falter. Humans, he thought, are strongest when they refuse to give up, no matter how impossible the situation seems. That strength would see them through tonight. When dawn finally broke, Liara stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, and she looked at Kale with a mixture of confusion, pain, and curiosity. You saved me," she said quietly. "I did," Kale replied simply, "and I'll keep saving you until you're out of danger." "You need to regain your strength. The fire isn't the only danger. There are people who would like to see you harmed. We have to be careful." But humans, when they truly chose to act, could defy all odds. They could survive when survival seemed impossible. They could protect and endure, even without armies or weapons. Kale spent the morning clearing the area around the cave, making basic defenses and preparing for any unforeseen threats. He scavenged supplies from the wreckage when it was safe, bringing back food, water, and anything useful. Liara watched, impressed and quietly learning. She saw his planning, his attention to detail, his ability to improvise when nothing went according to plan. Every action reminded her that humans were clever, adaptable, and brave beyond measure. By midday, they were somewhat safe. Liara could sit up, lean on Kale, and even take small sips of water. Her eyes, once fearful and weary, now held a spark of determination. Kale had given her more than physical rescue. He had shown her the true nature of humanity: survival, courage, and unwavering will. As the sun dipped again toward the horizon, Kale looked at Liara and smiled faintly. "You'll be all right," he said. "We've made it through the worst part, but the fight isn't over yet." And Kale, carrying the weight of her life and the fire behind them, knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test both of them, in ways they could not yet imagine. But one thing was certain: humans would endure, survive, and fight back, even against fire, explosions, and conspiracies that spanned worlds. And sometimes, survival meant more than living. It meant standing tall, protecting others, and proving that humanity, even in its simplest form, was capable of greatness. The cave was quiet except for the occasional drip of water from the ceiling and the distant howl of wind across the rocky cliffs. Kale sat beside Liara, keeping a careful watch on the entrance. Even though the fire from the shuttle wreck had died down, danger had not disappeared. On the frontier, nothing came quietly. Liara's injuries were slowly healing, but she still needed support to move. She sat up, leaning against a jagged rock, her eyes studying Kale as he inspected the small perimeter he had cleared around the cave. "You move like a soldier," she said, her voice soft. "Even when things are chaotic, you always know what to do." "But I see now, humans, even ordinary ones, can survive when everything is against them. They can think, act, and fight in ways no army can predict." Kale froze and placed a finger on his lips, signaling Liara to stay quiet. Slowly, he rose and moved to the cave entrance. The rustling continued, soft at first, then louder. Something or someone was approaching. Kale's hand went to the small blaster at his belt. He had carried it out of habit, but he preferred to rely on strategy and careful planning over raw firepower. Using the shadows, he peered outside. 3 figures moved along the rocky slope, scanning the area. They were not human. Their armor had a metallic shimmer, and their movements were precise and coordinated. Kale's mind raced. These were likely scouts or raiders drawn by the shuttle crash. He returned to Liara. "We have company," he whispered. "But don't worry. They won't get inside without me knowing. We'll stay quiet and let them pass, or if necessary, we'll make them regret coming here." He could see their tactics were advanced, their technology superior to most frontier forces. But humans had something even they did not: ingenuity and unpredictability. Kale had survived countless ambushes not because he had better equipment, but because he used his mind and surroundings to his advantage. As the alien scouts passed, Kale whispered to Liara, "We need to move further inland. The wreck may have drawn more attention than we think. I found a map of the region in my memory banks. There's an old river canyon about 10 kilometers east that can provide better cover. It's risky, but safer than staying here." Every movement was calculated, careful, and deliberate. Kale led them along hidden paths, avoiding open areas where they could be spotted. His knowledge of the terrain was extensive. Years of transporting goods across dangerous planets had taught him how to read the land, predict hazards, and find safe routes even in uncharted territory. Hours passed, and the sun began to sink behind jagged cliffs. The canyon appeared in the distance, a narrow scar in the landscape, offering shelter and high cliffs for protection. Kale guided Liara carefully down the slope, avoiding loose rocks and sudden drops. By the time they reached the canyon floor, darkness had settled and the temperature had dropped sharply. Kale built a small fire, careful to keep it low and hidden. He treated Liara's minor wounds again, cleaning small cuts and bandaging them. She watched him work, fascinated. "You make it look so simple," she said. Kale shook his head. "It isn't simple, it's just practice. Humans learn to survive when they have no other choice. We adapt, improvise, and endure. That's why you're alive right now. Not because of luck, but because of those choices." Humans, she realized, were remarkable not because of their weapons or numbers, but because of their determination and intelligence. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed through the canyon. Kale stiffened, listening intently. It was a low, mechanical hum, almost imperceptible but familiar. His mind raced. "Drones," he muttered. "The attackers have sent drones to scout for survivors." When they passed overhead, Kale whispered, "See, humans can outthink machines. We use strategy, not just strength." Hours later, they finally stopped in a hidden section of the canyon where a small spring provided fresh water. Liara drank carefully, regaining some strength, while Kale gathered herbs and other natural materials to make a basic antiseptic for her burns. He taught her how to clean and dress wounds safely, and she listened intently, eager to learn. "You know," Liara said softly, "I never imagined surviving like this. I thought people like me, royalty, were untouchable, protected by armies and shields. But here I am, alive because of you. You, ordinary humans, are extraordinary in ways I never understood. It's about what you do when you're faced with impossible odds. It's about fighting for life, for others, for what's right. That's what makes humans strong." He knew the attackers were still out there, searching, waiting for an opportunity to strike. But he also knew that as long as humans had courage and wits, no machine, alien, or obstacle could overcome them. Liara woke at one point and whispered, "Will we be safe?" "That's what makes us different." She began to understand the true meaning of human resilience. Survival was a combination of intelligence, courage, and willpower. By the morning, Liara could move without Kale supporting her fully. Her strength was returning, and with it, a new confidence. They continued their journey deeper into the canyon, avoiding known routes, using natural barriers for cover, and staying quiet when threats passed nearby. Kale taught her to be cautious but not fearful, to observe but not hesitate, to survive but also to think ahead. By midday, they reached a plateau that provided a broad view of the surrounding landscape. Kale used this vantage point to survey for any signs of pursuit. "We're not out of danger yet," he said, "but we've made progress. The Empire will never know you were in danger if we stay smart and careful." Not because of armies, weapons, or titles, but because of courage, brains, and the refusal to give up. And sometimes, that's more important than any power the universe can throw at us. And for every challenge they faced, loose rocks, sudden drops, distant patrols, Kale found solutions. Liara followed his lead, learning quickly and beginning to understand why humans had survived and thrived in hostile environments across countless worlds. By nightfall, they found another sheltered cave along the plateau. Kale built another small, hidden fire and tended to Liara's injuries again. She looked at him, her eyes filled with respect and a growing sense of admiration. "I want to learn more," she said. "Not just to survive, but to be like you, to understand how humans endure. It's about making choices when everything is uncertain, staying strong when hope seems lost, and protecting others even when it costs you." And Kale, carrying her through danger with unwavering resolve, was the living proof of that spirit. As they settled for the night, Kale's thoughts wandered briefly to the shuttle crash and the conspiracies that might have caused it. He knew the dangers ahead would be greater than fire and rogue aliens. There were people who wanted the Empress's daughter out of the way, and perhaps even beyond human enemies. But Kale had learned long ago that humans thrived in impossible situations, and he would prove that once again, because humans, he thought, were not just survivors. They were fighters, thinkers, and protectors. And as long as he could keep moving, keep thinking, and keep protecting Liara, they would endure together. The canyon grew narrower as Kale and Liara moved deeper into its shadowed corridors. The walls rose like cliffs on either side, jagged and uneven, creating a natural maze. Sunlight barely touched the ground, making the path ahead uncertain. Kale moved with practiced caution, scanning every curve, every ledge for signs of danger. Liara followed closely, leaning on him when the uneven terrain challenged her still healing body. "They could be anywhere," she whispered, her voice tight with tension. "The attackers, the drones, whoever caused the crash." We have reason, strategy, and willpower. As long as we think, we can survive. As long as we act, we can overcome even the worst dangers. Humans, she realized, were extraordinary in ways no palace or army could teach. As they moved further, Kale noticed signs that they were not alone. Small footprints, almost invisible in the dust, ran parallel to their path. The shape and spacing were not human, but Kale could not identify them immediately. He crouched, studying the tracks. They were deliberate, cautious, and scanning as they moved. Someone or something was following them. He whispered to Liara, "Stay close, stay quiet. We have company, but we're ready." She began to see what he meant. Humans could endure because they chose to act, not because they had perfect weapons or endless armies. The canyon opened briefly into a small clearing. Kale paused, crouching behind a rock. The light revealed a small alien outpost, abandoned, or so it seemed. Broken machinery and shattered containers littered the ground, and scorch marks told of a recent struggle. Kale signaled Lara to stay hidden. "They were here recently," he muttered. "We're lucky they didn't see us yet." As they reached the far side, Kale spotted something partially buried under rubble, a small data device. He picked it up, dusting it off. "This could be important," he said. "It might tell us why the shuttle crashed or who's trying to harm the Empress's daughter. If it's booby-trapped or encrypted, I'll know. Humans are clever when they need to be. Sometimes cleverness is stronger than force." "They wanted you out of the way, Liara, and it looks like a human faction may be involved, not just aliens. We survive and act when the world is against us." Kale studied the data device further, finding key information about the attackers' plans. They were organized, moving in squads and using advanced technology. But Kale could see patterns in their movements, weaknesses in their strategies, and opportunities for escape. His mind worked like a chessboard, each piece carefully considered, each move anticipating the opponent's next action. "This," he said, "is why humans endure. We don't just react. We plan, adapt, and anticipate. We turn disadvantages into advantages. And that is why you are alive, Liara." Survival, she saw now, was not about power or protection. It was about resilience, strategy, and the human spirit. As night fell, they found shelter in a natural cave hidden among boulders. Kale made a small fire, low and controlled, just enough to keep them warm and signal their presence subtly if needed. Liara rested while Kale kept watch, scanning the canyon and listening for movement. The air was tense, filled with the possibility of danger at any moment. During the quiet, Kale taught Liara simple survival techniques: how to move quietly, how to read terrain, how to spot signs of approaching threats. Each lesson was simple but critical. She absorbed everything, understanding that humans thrived because they learned, adapted, and acted. Suddenly, distant sounds echoed through the canyon. Kale stiffened, alert. He scanned the darkness with sharp eyes, listening. Shadows moved on the cliffs above, figures watching them from a distance. Drones, scouts, or worse, Kale could not be certain, but he did not panic. Humans survived because they could think under pressure. "Stay behind me," he whispered to Liara. "No sudden movements. Watch, learn, and follow my lead." Hours passed as they moved through the canyon. Kale's experience was unmatched. He avoided danger without confrontation, relying on human ingenuity rather than weapons. Liara followed closely, learning quickly. Each decision Kale made was a lesson in survival. Stay calm, observe carefully, act decisively, and never underestimate the power of human wit. By morning, they reached a small plateau overlooking a valley. Kale paused, scanning the horizon. There were signs of the attackers below: trails, discarded supplies, and faint smoke, but the immediate area seemed clear. He allowed Liara to rest, giving her water and simple food scavenged along the way. "You know," Liara said softly, "I never realized humans were like this. Ordinary people with no armies or technology can outthink, outlast, and survive better than anyone expected." She had begun to see Kale not just as a rescuer, but as proof of humanity's resilience. Humans were not perfect. They made mistakes, faced danger, and sometimes failed, but they persisted. And persistence, she realized, was the greatest strength of all. They continued through the plateau, careful but steady. Kale led the way, pointing out hazards, teaching Liara how to move quietly and how to read the land for signs of danger. She followed, gaining confidence and strength with every step. Humans, she realized, survived not because they were invincible, but because they were clever, determined, and willing to act when necessary. As evening approached, Kale spotted an abandoned alien outpost in the valley below. It could provide shelter and supplies, but it was risky. He weighed the options carefully. "We'll go in cautiously," he said. "We need supplies and information, but we can't rush. Patience and strategy are our allies." She had learned that humans thrived not by brute force, but by intelligence, foresight, and courage. And Kale embodied all of those traits, guiding her through dangers she had never imagined and teaching her that survival was a skill, a mindset, and a choice. Together, they moved down toward the outpost, hidden by shadows and the uneven terrain. Kale's mind worked constantly, predicting possible threats, planning escape routes, and considering contingencies. He taught Liara to think the same way, showing her that humans could turn any situation, even one filled with danger, into an advantage with patience and intelligence. Inside the outpost, they found supplies and a communication device that had been partially damaged. Kale examined it carefully, using his knowledge to repair the most critical functions. He accessed logs that revealed more about the attackers, their schedules, weaknesses, and the likely locations of their main base. "This confirms it," Kale said. "The crash was sabotage and these attackers are organized, but they are not invincible. Humans survive because we adapt, learn, and exploit weaknesses, and we'll use this knowledge to keep moving forward." As night fell, they prepared to rest in the outpost. Kale kept watch, Liara recovering, both aware that the dangers ahead would test them further. But they had proven something already. Humans could endure, survive, and fight back, even in the most impossible situations. And that knowledge, that spirit, would carry them forward through the challenges yet to come. The alien outpost was silent except for the faint hum of damaged machinery and the soft rustling of the wind outside. Kale moved carefully among the debris, scanning the room for supplies and anything that could aid their journey. Liara followed him closely, her movements more confident now, though she still leaned slightly on his arm for support. Her eyes were sharper, observing everything around her, and Kale noticed the spark of determination in them. She was learning, adapting, and gaining strength, human strength. Kale retrieved a small container of clean water and a few preserved rations. "This will keep us going for a while," he said. "We need to be smart with our resources. Humans endure not by chance, but by planning ahead. We don't rely on luck. We observe, calculate, and act." Liara watched with awe. "You're incredible," she said softly. "I've never seen anyone do this before." They had tracked the shuttle and intentionally caused the crash. But Kale also noticed inconsistencies in their communications, gaps that indicated internal disagreements or weaknesses. "See this?" he said, pointing to the data. "Even the most organized enemies have flaws. Humans find and exploit them. But we have to move carefully. Every action has consequences. Humans endure because we anticipate and adapt, not because we are reckless." The path was narrow and dark, forcing them to rely on their senses and instincts. Kale taught Liara how to listen for subtle sounds, how to feel vibrations in the ground, and how to anticipate movements before they happened. Each lesson was simple but powerful. Humans survived because they could think faster, act smarter, and endure longer than most. Hours passed as they navigated the tunnels. Outside, the night was cold and the air was heavy with tension. Kale kept a steady pace, adjusting for Liara's strength. She moved with increasing confidence, occasionally testing her balance and agility under his guidance. Every step was a testament to human adaptability. Finally, they emerged from the tunnels into a small clearing surrounded by jagged rocks. Kale paused, scanning the area. The valley beyond stretched wide and open, with patches of alien vegetation and remnants of other settlements scattered across the landscape. He could see smoke rising in the distance, likely the raiders' camps. "We need to cross this valley," Kale said quietly. "But we can't do it directly, too exposed. We'll use the terrain to our advantage." She had seen him survive impossible situations, and she knew that following his lead was their best chance. Humans, she realized, were strongest when they combined courage with intelligence, and Kale embodied both. Using rocks, dips in the terrain, and abandoned structures for cover, they moved across the valley. Kale taught Liara how to blend with shadows, move silently, and use natural obstacles to shield themselves from sight. The raiders were likely searching for them, but Kale's careful planning kept them hidden. Halfway across the valley, they heard the distant hum of drones. Kale froze, signaling Liara to stay low. He observed their movements and calculated their trajectory. "We can't outrun them," he whispered, "but we can outthink them. Follow me exactly. Not by being faster or stronger, but by thinking, adapting, and acting at the right moment." By dawn, they reached the edge of a dense forest that could provide cover and resources. Kale allowed Liara to rest briefly while he scouted ahead. He moved silently, his eyes sharp, his mind calculating. Humans endured because they observed, planned, and acted decisively. Every movement Kale made reflected that principle. He returned and guided Liara into the forest. The trees were tall and thick, creating natural shadows that hid them from view. Kale showed her how to use the terrain to their advantage, how to move without leaving traces, and how to find food and water if needed. Each lesson reinforced a single truth. Humans survived by thinking, adapting, and persisting, no matter the odds. As they moved deeper into the forest, Liara began to speak more freely. "Kale, I've been thinking about what you said," she said softly. "About humans, about courage and intelligence. I see it now. You didn't just save me because you're strong. You saved me because you think, plan, and refuse to give up. That is what makes humans extraordinary. To be human in the way you've shown me." The forest was alive with sounds, birds, rustling leaves, distant waterfalls, but Kale's trained senses detected every subtle shift. Humans endured not just through strength or speed, but through awareness and adaptability. Liara watched him quietly, realizing that survival was more than escaping danger. It was about learning, observing, and thinking. Humans thrived because they could face uncertainty, make decisions, and act with purpose. Kale had demonstrated that at every turn, and she was beginning to understand the depth of human capability. As night fell, Kale spoke softly. "Tomorrow, we continue toward the highlands. There's a safe zone where we can rest and gather supplies before moving further, but we must remain vigilant. Humans endure by never underestimating danger, and by using every advantage." The night passed without incident, but Kale remained alert. He taught Liara how to listen to the forest, how to read signs of predators or enemies, and how to move silently. Every lesson reinforced the principle that humans survived by using their minds as much as their bodies. By dawn, Liara was stronger and more confident. She could move through the forest with greater ease, her senses attuned to the environment. Kale watched her closely, proud of her progress. Humans endured not just through training or experience, but through determination, observation, and action. Liara was beginning to embody those qualities. As they prepared to leave the forest and continue toward the highlands, Kale felt a surge of hope. The journey was far from over, but they had survived countless dangers together. Humans endured because they were intelligent, adaptable, and courageous. And as long as they continued to think, plan, and act, they could face any challenge the universe placed before them. Liara looked at Kale with newfound admiration. "I understand now," she said softly. "Humans endure because we refuse to give up. We survive because we think, adapt, and protect those who matter. And I want to be part of that strength." The journey would test them, but Kale knew that human ingenuity, courage, and willpower would carry them forward. They had survived fire, betrayal, and relentless pursuit, and now they would continue to endure, stronger and wiser than before. The highlands rose ahead of them like jagged teeth against the sky, cliffs and ridges stretching far and wide. Kale led Liara through narrow passes, his eyes scanning for threats. The journey had been long and dangerous, but they had survived fires, ambushes, and treacherous terrain. Yet Kale knew the worst was still to come. Somewhere out there, the forces that had sabotaged the shuttle and attacked them were gathering. Liara walked beside him, stronger and more confident now. She had learned how to move quietly, how to watch for danger, and how to adapt when circumstances changed. She still depended on Kale's guidance, but she no longer needed to lean on him as much. Her eyes reflected determination and trust, a new understanding of what it meant to survive as a human. Kale paused atop a ridge to survey the valley below. Smoke rose from several small camps scattered across the plains, the aliens' forward positions. "We need to cross that valley and reach the highlands on the far side," he said softly. "We can't take the main route, it's too exposed. But I've spotted a path through the rocky ridges. It's narrow, but it will give us cover. Lead the way." Humans endured because they could think ahead, adapt, and exploit opportunities where others saw only danger. As they reached the midpoint of the ridge, Kale froze. "We're not alone," he whispered. Two alien scouts were positioned below, observing the valley. They had not seen Kale and Liara yet, but their presence meant the journey across the valley would be risky. Kale turned to Liara. "We'll have to create a distraction. Humans endure because we improvise. We use strategy and intelligence, not just strength. Follow my lead." Kale signaled Liara to move quickly, and they slipped through a narrow path along the ridge, hidden from view. The distraction had worked. Hours later, they reached the base of the far highlands. The terrain was rough and uneven, but it provided excellent cover. Kale led Liara into a hidden cave that overlooked the valley. From there, they could observe the raiders' positions, gather intelligence, and plan their next move. "We need to strike carefully," Kale said, examining the valley. "We have the advantage of knowledge, but we don't have their numbers or technology. Humans endure by thinking, by using what we have wisely, and by staying one step ahead of danger." By mid-morning, Kale had formulated a plan. They would infiltrate one of the raider camps, gather crucial information, and disrupt their operations. It was dangerous, but humans survived by acting decisively when it mattered most. They moved carefully, using shadows and natural cover to approach the camp. Kale signaled Liara to stay low and follow his movements precisely. The camp was bustling with activity, raiders moving supplies, drones scanning the perimeter, but Kale's careful observation had revealed blind spots. Timing, patience, and intelligence would be their allies. Kale and Liara slipped into the camp, silent and unseen. They moved quickly, gathering supplies and scanning for critical data. Kale located a central terminal and accessed communications. The holographic display revealed the raiders' full plan, including the names of the human conspirators involved in the shuttle sabotage. Liara's eyes widened. They planned this from the start, and will use it to survive and protect what matters. As they reached a hidden pass, Kale paused. "We're almost safe," he said. "But the final challenge is ahead. We need to reach the Empire's forward outpost. It's our only chance for real safety. I've seen what humans can do, and I know we can survive together." The sun began to set as they neared the Empire's outpost. Smoke from distant fires painted the sky orange and red. Kale and Liara moved swiftly, staying low and using shadows to remain unseen. The outpost was heavily guarded, but Kale had a plan. Humans survived because they could think, adapt, and act with precision when stakes were highest. Kale signaled Liara to follow a narrow drainage path beneath the outer walls. It was tight, dark, and risky, but it provided a hidden approach. They slipped through silently, reaching the interior of the outpost without alerting the guards. Once inside, Kale led Liara to the command center. Using the data they had gathered, he transmitted a secure message to the Empire, revealing the sabotage, the alien raiders, and the human conspirators. The Empire's response was swift. Reinforcements would arrive within hours, but until then, Kale and Liara needed to hold their position. Liara looked at him, admiration and respect shining in her eyes. "You've saved me not just once but countless times. I've never seen anything like it. Humans, they endure against impossible odds. They survive because they think, act, and refuse to give up. That's why we're still here and why you're still alive." When the Empire's forces finally arrived, Kale and Liara emerged from their hiding place. Soldiers and guards quickly secured the area, apprehending the raiders and restoring order. The Empress herself arrived shortly after, her eyes filled with concern and gratitude. Liara stepped forward, standing beside Kale. "This man saved me," she said, her voice steady. "He carried me through fire, danger, and impossible situations. He taught me what humans are truly capable of. You have my deepest gratitude. Help me understand how humans endure, how we survive, think, and act." Staying was not just an offer. It was a chance to continue demonstrating what humans could achieve, to guide and protect, and to be part of something greater than survival alone. He nodded. "Then I will stay. Humans endure because we choose to, because we act, and because we protect those who matter. And I will continue to do so, for you and for the Empire." The Empire recognized Kale's skills and judgment, offering him a permanent position to advise and train future generations in survival, strategy, and human ingenuity. Through it all, Liara and Kale developed a deep bond, forged not through privilege or titles, but through shared danger, trust, and respect. Humans endured not because of power, wealth, or technology, but because they could think, adapt, and act with courage and intelligence. Kale had carried the Empress's daughter from a burning wreck, navigated countless dangers, and outsmarted enemies far stronger and better equipped than he was. And in doing so, he had shown the universe the truth about humanity, that ordinary humans could achieve extraordinary feats through determination, intelligence, and courage. As the sun set over the highlands, Kale and Liara stood side by side, looking out across the landscape. The fires of the past were gone, the conspiracies exposed, and the future uncertain. But one thing was clear: humans would endure. Liara turned to Kale and said softly, "Stay with me. Teach me everything. Help me become the kind of human who can survive anything." That's why we survive. And with that knowledge, Kale and Liara stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next together.